Hey guys, Jim here. I'm really excited about bringing this knife out here. This is a knife that I've tried for about a year to get my hands on, and I've tried and tried and tried and beat my head against the wall, and I was finally able to nail one down. And it really it has lived up to the expectations that I have. And sometimes when you're chasing a knife or anything that it is that you collect, when you chase something really hard, sometimes it can be difficult for it to live up to the expectation that you have in your own mind, and this one certainly did. It's a little different than I expected, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but absolutely amazing knife. So expect this to be a very gratuitous and glowing review. This is the Maximus, made by a gentleman in Paris, France, named Thierry Savidan. Now, being a Parisian knife maker means that if you're gonna make a tactical style knife, particularly a flipper, you're probably not gonna see great success in your homeland because that's just not the style of knife that dominates that scene. So when we kind of go back into Thierry's history here, when he created the Maximus and created this unbelievably cool backspine, it was first shown at a Paris knife show back in 2013. And as you would expect, being a tactical style knife, even though isn't really like tactical, it fits into that vein, and that's the only reason I use that term. And being a flipper, it wasn't a big hit for him. It was only when he brought it to the Blade show in 2014 that he saw the success that I feel that this particular design deserves. Everything sold out instantly. He just attended the Blade show again here this year in 2015, and within minutes, everything was sold out again. Now, with the power of social media, particularly Instagram, guys like me came across this design and went, holy shit, I have got to have this thing. It is probably one of the most perfectly made knives I've ever handled at any price range. Let's take a look here at some close-ups before I get my fingerprints all over the polished zirconium, because that is the one big downside to zirconium. It looks amazing. It is slightly more scratch resistant than titanium, but when you polish it, or you polish anything, it's going to be a fingerprint magnet. Everything about this knife is absolutely up my alley. Number one, my favorite lock style is a bolster lock. That gives you the strength of a frame lock and the build of a frame lock, but you get the look of the presentation side on the lock side, so you still have a scale there. And I like having the matching sides. I've gotten to, I wouldn't say dislike frame locks, but I appreciate them a little bit less. There are some makers that will put a lot of work into that frame, into that lock side, and I feel it's worth it then. You know, guys like Gus Zucchini, GTC Knives, is a great example. He does a lot of mill work on this side of the knife. Jim Burke is the same way. But a lot of times it's just naked on this side. No matter how beautiful it is on the presentation side, it's just naked on this side, and it feels a little bit imbalanced. So I really like having a bolster lock. It's got a beautifully made, fully contoured, fully sculpted clip. So no cheapy spring clip. You guys know I have a big thing about that. It's a good size. I like to be between 3.5 and 3.85 inches for my blade length. This is a 3.5 inch blade. It's S35 VN. Good quality steel. Not a super steel, not anything overly amazing, but still a good performing steel. And it's got little details throughout the entire design that blow my mind. But the other great thing about this knife is the action. It is lightning fast, ridiculously smooth, to the point where when I first got it, I had to check to see if the pivot was loose. Funny enough, it actually was. So I tightened the pivot back down, and then I was like, oh, it's not going to have the same action. And sure as shit, it does. It is a real beauty to behold. When you look at it overall, the shape of it is unique. The overall aesthetics of this knife really don't exist. Little, components here and there certainly do. But as its overall design, it is a standalone, unique design. Some of the features that I really love, the S-shaped bolster. It's not just a straight or angled bolster. It's an S-shaped bolster, and that zirconium scale meets up to it wonderfully. Almost don't feel anything at all there. Now you'll notice that the titanium is nearly as dark as the zirconium. It's a really, really finely finished titanium, as you can see there with the light glaring off of it. But he has blackened it all the way through. Then you have the blackened titanium for the clip. And then the back spine is blackened titanium with these ceramic ball bearings press fit inside. It's a stunning little touch. It really is. And I love the milling that he's done here on the flipper tab. Again, unique. It sets him apart from everybody else. Just overall just a fantastic knife. Now the thing that I wasn't expecting is the size, because every picture you see of this knife, it looks gigantic. I mean, it looks monstrously huge because of this whale-like shape. When in fact, it's actually pretty small. I'll put it up here next to my Steve Skiff Accomplice, which is also a 3.5 inch. And you see that just because of the handle, it's only a little bit bigger. But the visual distinction of this, especially right here, this massive size and how big that blade is there, allows this knife to look a lot bigger than it really is. So if you're looking at the pictures and expecting this thing to be a big monster, it's really not. And I had not seen it listed on any dealer websites to even see specifications, to even read that it was a 3.5 inch blade. I actually thought it was going to be close to or at a 4-inch blade. Now you guys have seen this particular knife before, because if you notice, it's got a really nice mirror polished, well, I wouldn't say mirror polished, yeah, actually it is mirror polished swedge. This is the only Maximus right now that has a swedge. All the rest are without the swedge. It's just a very, 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 very high flat grind. So with this one having that swedge, it sets it apart, makes it different. Those of you that know Civi and his YouTube channel, he actually bought this at the Blade Show directly from Terry, and then I guess he had some grail pop up at the show, and he ended up turning it right around and flipping it, and he sold it, and I got it from the guy that got it from him. It's an amazing knife all the way around. 3.5 inch S35 VN, 8 3/8 inches overall. It's about 7 ounces in weight. And the price on these really isn't that bad, especially when you consider the materials. And he has done fancier, he has done mokutai and things like that. But a knife like this is about $1,200 direct from Terry, and expect to pay somewhere between $1,400 and $1,800 on the secondary market. The way I look at it, from the ergonomics, the way that this melts into my hand, allows the blade to drop down right to where my fingers are, instead of coming straight out here like you would expect, dropping way down, which is very similar to what Tashi does, another French knife maker. Maybe it's just a French thing. They like a big blade that drops way down in the hand. Makes it easier for cutting tasks without hitting your hand against the table, perhaps. I don't know. But the feel of it, the aesthetics of it, the details, the materials, the workmanship, everything is perfect for me. It really is. And it easily justifies the money that I have into it. It is effortless to flip. Truly, truly effortless. And another thing, actually, if you look at it, that reminds me of Tashi, is the shape of the flipper tab, where it comes up like a ramp, and then it drops off with a flat face. And so instead of, push buttoning like some flippers might want you to do, or rocking back, you're actually pulling straight back. And with that flat surface directly behind the pivot, you're actually forcing it to flip out extremely fast. It's actually rather interesting, the similarities we have here to Tashi's work. Very large cutout, very large choil here. So that again aids in your hand going way up into the handle. No jimping, by the way. I find that interesting with all the notches and cutouts that there are in the frame and in the blade, that there's no jimping. But again, this is somebody that, in his market, it's about art knives and beauty and flowing organic lines, which this definitely has, and I think that really attracts me, is the organic nature of the overall flow of this design. That maybe the jimping would have broken that up. Let's take a good look here at what I think really is the showpiece, the centerpiece of this knife. Some people have called this knife an integral. It is not an integral. You do have an independent backspacer or back spine that is sandwiched between the two titanium liners and then of course the zirconium scales. But what I love is the fact that he's chosen to cut away the frame and the scale entirely to expose this back spine, and then let it come out a little bit here and a little bit of a ducktail to hold your lanyard. I could have done without that, but I like the fact that I had the option to put a lanyard on there, and I might actually put one on this knife just to see how it looks and how it feels in the pocket. But I've actually carried this several times since I got it about a week and a half ago, and I've had no issues extracting it from the pocket. It's got a fairly high ride in the pocket, so if you look here, and the base is where your the lip of your pants is going to stop it. So you've got that much sticking up out of your pocket, so it's certainly very, very easy to grab and get the meat of your hand around as you're trying to extract it, so you don't have to change the position on the knife with your hand. So I may not actually do the lanyard, but I love the fact that he's put so much detail work into such a pedestrian part of a knife. When you think about it, the backspacer is utilitarian. It's there, obviously, to give the space between the frame for the blade to go in and to provide that solid foundation. But what he's done is he's made it the centerpiece for this particular design, and I think it's brilliant. He's matched it up well here to the flipper tab. Now, there are no ceramic balls in there. It is really, really nicely milled, stepped in nicely with some really good serrations right there on the front face. So your finger's not going to slip off of this when you go to engage the flipper tab. I like the fact that the tang of the blade follows the shape of the bolsters, follows the shape of the frame. It's another indication to me that he cares about the overall quality and the total presentation. Something you don't see, at least on my channel, very often. For whatever reason, I have not gotten a lot of knives in the past year that have had crown spines. But it's got a nice crown blade spine that meets up to this swedge. And you can see, I don't know if I can quite get there we go, to focus. Here's where you can see that this is a guy that's grinding everything by hand. He's not having this stuff pre-ground for him on a machine because his left hand to right hand is a little tiny bit off. That's not a knock against him at all. That I like to see that, because that does give you the indication that, hey, my knife is truly handmade, or at the very least hand ground. And yes, this is a completely handmade knife. So yeah, you're going to pay that premium. If this was an all CNC machined knife, I would expect that you would probably pay a good, probably $400 or $500 less. But being a premium handmade knife with these materials, realizing how difficult it is to execute an S-shaped bolster, not just running a straight line, the incredible action that, believe it or not, he's not even pulling off with ceramic bearings. He has a ceramic detent, but the bearings are regular steel caged bearings. And yet, and again, I only do this where I drop the blade under its own weight so that you get an idea, without touching the knife yourself, on how smooth it really is. This is not how I close my knives when I'm using them. But when you actually go to use this, it is truly amazing to feel the action. And that is something that I have found to be quite addicting. There are certain things we love about knives. It could be the design, it could be the degree of sharpness that it has, the utilitarian purposes. And for me, it's everything, but a big part of it for me is always going to be the action, how it feels. Now, it doesn't have to drop close under its own weight. It's nice to see that because you get that even just a visual sense of how smooth it is. But I was using my skiff for an example earlier. This does not really do that. You have to really give it a few good jiggles. It does to some degree, but the thing is, it's fast and it's smooth without actually doing that. That's what I want. If it's a flipper, it needs to flip fast. It needs to go to full lock without having to do anything weird with your finger on the flipper tab or flick your wrist or summon a fucking demon from hell like if it was a hinderer. It should truly flip effortlessly. It should do it fast and it should do it smoothly. What he's done here is he has executed, in my opinion, a damn near perfect knife. There are only two things that I would change on this knife. And I know somebody out there is thinking, boy, I wish you would have used hidden hardware on the scales. I hear that a lot on various knives after I've brought out, Stan Wilson and after I brought out Frank Fisher on my channel. You have to realize there are only a handful of makers in this entire industry that really do that. And to do it is extraordinarily laborious, and that equates to very, very expensive. So I have no problem with there being two screws holding the scales on. People have to stop using that as a bar for perfection. Yes, when you get to a certain level, it is an absolute call out when it has that. But if it doesn't have hidden hardware, you shouldn't detract away any points from how amazing the knife is, because that's how a fucking knife is made. That's just the way it is. Just because it's done to a much higher degree and a much higher price point. You can't touch a single Stan Wilson made for the price of this knife. You can't touch a Frank Fisher for the price of this knife. You're really going to be paying double, triple, quadruple. So you do have to keep that in mind. But there are two things that I would have liked to have seen. Number one, I would have liked to have seen blind screwed clip. So having the hidden hardware for the clip, because that in and of itself is not that big of a challenge. It would have cleaned up and neatened up the presentation on this side. Not a major thing for me, but it is something that when I first saw the knife, I went, oh geez, I wish he would have done that. So that's the suggestion I would make for the future. Blind screwed pocket clip would really, really set this knife off and look great. And number two, I'd like to see this in a 4-inch. So it's not a knock against the knife, it's just a personal preference. I feel a little tiny bit cramped because of the way this knife is shaped. It's not quite a fighter style, so it's not coming around here and hooking the pinky, but the way that it's held in the hand because of this choil and because you're sitting behind this massive block behind the flipper, if this was a little bit cut away further up and less of a block up there, I'd feel a little bit better. But it's a little bit small feeling in my hands. I wear a size large glove for your reference. So, because you see, I'm completely hiding this knife in my hand. So I actually asked Terry if he would consider making a 4-inch, and he's like, well, I don't know about that yet. So we'll see. If he makes this in a 4-inch, I'll tell you right now, this will be up for sale, and I'll be buying that. To me, this in a 4-inch would be the perfect knife. Although I can't imagine how monstrous that fucker would look in pictures. Can you imagine? All right, so that's pretty much it for me on this, guys. I want to thank you for joining me as always. I'm amazed by this knife. I'm going to be carrying it a lot more now that I've gotten the video and the photography done on it, and I don't mind getting a few surface scratches on the zirconium. This is going to be a knife that is going to get a lot of carry. I've enjoyed the living shit out of it, and all of my friends that I've shown it to have just been like, holy shit, that's amazing. Where can I get one? Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing, and then it goes back to a lot of the videos I do. yeah, it's a guy whose books are closed. You can't order from him. You have to look through. Maybe a dealer is going to get one. Maybe they'll pop up at a knife show like the Blade Show. Or you got to go on the secondary market and pay a few $100s more. And I tell you right now, in this configuration, anything up to 1,500, 1,600 bucks, you're going to feel totally justified. In more exotic stuff like maybe Damascus or a Mokutai scale or bolster or something, you have to add the cost of those components to it. I think you're going to be totally fine. I think you're going to be very, very, very impressed with everything about this knife if you get one in your hands. And with that, guys, I'm out of here, and I'll see you on the next video.